What's up everyone and welcome back to the World History Channel. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button today. Let's get started. The undercover archaeologist and female archaeologist who made Indiana Jones look bad, who was Gertrude Bell. During World War I, she was one of many British spies in the Middle East, where she helped orchestrate the end of the Ottoman Empire. She was also an archaeologist, a writer, an explorer, a mountaineer, and the first woman to earn an Oxford University degree in modern history. In 1868, Gertrude Bell was born in Durham, England. She was a debutante who attended a ball hosted by Queen Victoria, like the majority of upper-class women of the time, and she had one brother and 3 half-siblings. However, that marked the turning point in her extraordinary life from her normal existence. Her obsession with Persia began when she visited her uncle, Sir Frank Lascelles, who was stationed there as a British ambassador. She spent the majority of her life in that area of the world, interacting with people like T.E. Lawrence, you may know him better as Lawrence of Arabia, and Sir William Ramsay. She was ultimately responsible for the establishment of Iraq and the opening of the Baghdad Archaeological Museum. In 1926, Bell passed away in her sleep. While others attribute her death to an accidental overdose of sleeping pills, others assert that she committed suicide. Regardless, Bell lived a life that was both fascinating and compelling. She received a degree from Oxford University at a time when most women didn't attend college. Colleges are a group of smaller schools that make up Oxford University. One of these is Lady Margaret Hall, which was the only institution that accepted women at the end of the 1800s. Women weren't supposed to be educated at the time. However, Gertrude Bell went to college regardless of the social norms of the time. She was the first woman to earn an Oxford degree in modern history, but her gender prevented her from participating in the graduation ceremony. She forged new routes through the Alps and climbed several famous mountain peaks. Gertrude Bell scaled her first mountain in 1899. She climbed Meige, a French Alps mountain with 13,000 feet of elevation. Since there were no proper climbing clothing options for women at the time, Bell attempted the climb in a skirt, but quickly stripped down to her underclothes to make the trip more comfortable. She climbed every mountain in the Swiss Alps for the first time in 1901, this time in a blue climbing suit with pants instead of skirts. She accomplished this goal in a short 2 weeks, and charted some new paths through the mountains at the same time. In fact, Gertrude Spitz was given the name of one of the peaks in her honor. She spent the next few years climbing mountains, despite almost dying in a snowstorm while dangling from the side of the Finsteraarhorn in 1902. She had several love affairs despite never getting married. Gertrude Bell had a number of love affairs throughout her life, despite the fact that she never married and never had children. She married Major Charles Doughty Wylie in England and had an affair with him. Supposedly, the affair was never consummated. She almost married an Englishman, Henry Cadogan, but her father did not approve. After Sir Frank Athelstane Swettenham retired from his position as Resident General of the Federated Malay States, she had a passionate affair with him later in her life. She contributed significantly to the formation of Iraq. Gertrude Bell is referred to as the unofficial Queen of Iraq by a large number of senior Iraqi citizens who consider her to be one of their own. She played an important part in the formation of the country, which gained its independence after the fall of the Ottoman Empire during World War I. Even though Bell was working in Baghdad to protect her home country's oil interests, she remained committed to the Iraqi people's right to self-determination. She was so in love with the country that she moved there permanently in 1917. She is buried in a former British cemetery on the outskirts of Baghdad. She was accompanying the Armenian genocide. In 1915, just as Gertrude Bell was arriving in the Middle East as a part of an envoy of British intelligence, the Turkish leaders of the Ottoman Empire decided they were going to expel the Armenian people from their lands in any way possible. This led to the combined mass slaughter and deportation of 1.5 million of the estimated 2 million Armenians living within their borders. Therefore, Bell's support for the end of the empire and belief in sovereign states are not surprising. In France, she worked as a Red Cross volunteer. Gertrude Bell did something that was predictable and typical of British women at the time. She volunteered to work for the Red Cross and assist the war effort by assisting wounded soldiers when World War I began in 1914. She went straight to France, where the battle was taking place, and did her part. She was quickly recruited by British intelligence and sent to spy on, or orchestrate for them depending on your point of view, the fall of the Ottoman Empire. During World War I, she worked for British intelligence. Gertrude Bell was sent to Cairo in 1915 by British intelligence as a spy for her home country. She was the first woman ever given an officer position, and her fellow compatriots referred to her as Major Miss Bell. While there, she helped orchestrate an Arab uprising against the Turkish leaders of the Ottoman Empire by providing them with weapons and brought independence to what is now Iraq. She also assisted in preventing India's takeover of a portion of Mesopotamia. She moved permanently to Baghdad, Iraq in 1917, where she was officially a British assistant political officer with the insensitive title Oriental Secretary. She befriended Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence of Arabia, better known by his stage name T.E. During World War I, Lawrence worked for British intelligence and was stationed in France as a member of the British Foreign Office. He was also a catalyst for the Arab Revolt and the fall of Damascus. Lawrence of Arabia, a classic movie released in 1962, was also influenced by his life. He also got to know Gertrude Bell while he was stationed in the Middle East during World War I. They attended the Cairo Conference together in 1921, when British experts divided up Middle Eastern lands to form Iraq and Jordan today. She contributed to the formation of the Iraqi Museum, formerly the Baghdad Archaeological Museum. Gertrude Bell had a strong interest in archaeology despite her modern history education. The Baghdad Archaeological Museum, which opened in the 1920s, was the result of her enthusiasm for ancient history and the Middle East. The museum, which is now known as the Iraq National Museum, and is more well known for the looters who stole numerous artifacts in 2003, reopened in 2016. Unfortunately, the bust of Bell that stood in its entryway was one of the items that was never recovered. She was born into a noble British family, kind of. Gertrude Bell's father was Sir Hugh Bell, 2nd Baronet. A baronet is one step above knighthood but below barons and other noble gentry, according to British nobility rankings. Although it was not typically associated with land or other sources of income, the title could be purchased. The heir to the baronet title is referred to as Sir, and the wife is referred to as Dame. Bell did not have a title because baronet children do not have titles. However, despite her status, however minor, she didn't follow in the footsteps of her peers and attempt to marry up into a noble family. Rather, despite having an official coming out as a debutante, Bell went her own way. Several books about her travels were written by her. Gertrude Bell was more than just a British spy, archaeologist, nation-builder, mountain climber, and archaeologist. She was also an author. She published a number of books about her trips to the Middle East throughout her life, including Safar Nami and Mountains of the Servants of God, which were published in 1894 and 1910, respectively. Her writings proved her expertise on the region, and gave her a reason to befriend many of the tribal leaders living in the area. In all, she wrote at least 7 books, and her vast catalogue of correspondence, most of which was saved, was collected and published into a book posthumously. She worked with archaeologist Sir William Ramsay. Sir William Ramsay was a well-known scholar and archaeologist who specialized in the New Testament and the history of Turkey, then known as Asia Minor. Before she met Ramsay and began working alongside him, Gertrude Bell was mostly an self-taught archaeologist. He taught her a good deal of information about the area, and on archaeology in general. 1001 Churches is a book that they co-wrote about Christian and Byzantine sites in Turkey's Anatolia. She was given the British Empire Order. King George V devised a method in 1917 to recognize British citizens who contributed to the nation's efforts during World War I. He invented the Order of the British Empire. This honorary title is given to esteemed individuals who have made a significant contribution to the country. Gertrude Bell was among the first group of recipients. At least 7 languages were hers. Gertrude Bell spent the majority of her adult life in the Middle East. This was a time of great turmoil in that part of the world, with the fall of the Ottoman Empire and the creation of many countries that comprise the modern Middle East. Belle became a true polyglot because she learned many of the local languages because of the region's diversity. On top of her native English, she also spoke fluent French, German, Turkish, and Arabic, as well as other regional dialects. The estate of her family might become a museum. Her family estate might be turned into a museum. Photo. Gertrude Bell / Public Domain Wikimedia Commons. Gertrude Bell grew up in the town of Redcar, England. Her family estate features an unusual, for the area, arts and crafts / Georgian revival style house called Red Barn. After her family left the house behind, it was turned into a hotel. As of 2016, the house was vacant, and despite being listed as an historic property, fell prey to the elements. A highly successful exhibit on Bell's life at the Great North Museum in Newcastle piqued interest in creating a whole museum devoted to her. Historians are attempting to save Red Barn and turn it into the first Gertrude Bell Museum. In a movie, Nicole Kidman played her. Nicole Kidman played her in a movie. Photo, FC Films. Queen of the Desert is an independent movie that came out in April 2017. The film, written and directed by Werner Herzog, is based on Gertrude Bell's life. It focuses specifically on the numerous years she spent in the Middle East, where she played a significant role in the formation of the nations that are still there today. Nicole Kidman plays Belle, and the film also features Robert Pattinson, James Franco, and Damian Lewis, among others. Despite the fascinating source material, the film was a commercial and critical flop. Long before the Hollywood whip-wielding icon Indiana Jones thrilled audiences with daring archaeology and desert escapades, there lived a real-life adventurer who arguably put him to shame, Gertrude Bell, the fearless female archaeologist, political powerhouse, mountaineer, and undercover agent whose influence helped shape the modern Middle East. Belle defied Victorian gender norms when she was born in 1868 in Durham, England, to a wealthy and well-connected industrial family. While many upper-class women were content with tea parties and marriage proposals, Belle was studying modern history at Oxford, where she became the first woman to graduate with highest honors in her field despite not being permitted to take part in the formal graduation ceremony due to her gender. Her academic success only marked the beginning of an astonishing life. Obsessed with adventure and discovery, Belle developed a fascination with Persia after visiting her uncle, Sir Frank Lascelles, the British ambassador in Tehran. The Middle East would become her life's passion and mission from that point forward. She learned multiple languages including Arabic, Persian, Turkish, and French, and embedded herself so deeply into Middle Eastern cultures that tribal leaders began to treat her as one of their own. She bravely explored the Arabian deserts, mapped uncharted terrain, and established herself as one of the world's leading experts on the region at a time when few women were even allowed to travel alone. In 1899, Belle scaled the 13,000-foot Meije in the French Alps in underwear after removing her restrictive skirt. 2 weeks later, she conquered the Swiss Alps in 2 weeks, tracing new paths and nearly dying in a snowstorm along the Finsteraarhorn. Her mountaineering accomplishments alone would put her in the history books. One peak was even named after her, Gertrude Spitz. Yet adventure was only one side of her remarkable story. When World War I broke out, Belle began her career with the British Red Cross, but her unparalleled knowledge of the Middle East soon caught the attention of British intelligence. She was recruited in 1915 and became the first woman to hold a British officer's rank in military intelligence. Known as Major Miss Belle, she was stationed in Cairo and later Baghdad, where she collaborated closely with T.E. Lawrence, yes, that Lawrence of Arabia. Together, they orchestrated the Arab Revolt and strategized the eventual dismantling of the Ottoman Empire. Belle's influence only grew after the war. At the 1921 Cairo Conference, where British officials literally redrew the map of the Middle East, Belle was the only woman present and arguably the most informed. She played a pivotal role in the creation of modern Iraq, advising on its borders, installing Faisal I as king, and serving as Oriental Secretary in Baghdad. The people of Iraq knew her not as a colonial outsider, but as a trusted ally, so much so that she became known as the unofficial Queen of Iraq. And while her title was informal, her authority was not. She was instrumental in founding the Baghdad Archaeological Museum, now known as the Iraq National Museum, securing priceless Mesopotamian artifacts and protecting Iraq's cultural legacy for future generations. Tragically, much of this work was undone by the looting of the museum during the 2003 Iraq War, and Belle's bust, once proudly displayed at the entrance, has never been recovered. Beyond her political and archaeological endeavors, Belle bore witness to history's darkest chapters, most notably the Armenian genocide. Her diaries contain first-hand accounts of the atrocities committed by the Ottoman Empire, and these experiences only further fueled her passion for independence and justice in the region. Despite her public achievements, Belle's private life was marked by loneliness and heartbreak. Though she never married, she had several affairs, including a romantic and likely unconsummated relationship with the married Major Charles Doughty Wiley, who died in battle at Gallipoli. Later, she fell for Sir Frank Swettenham, a former colonial administrator. Though she was adored by many, Belle remained fiercely independent, prioritizing her work and ideals above conventional domestic life. Toward the end of her life, Belle grew disillusioned with British politics and frustrated with how the country she loved, Iraq, was being treated by foreign powers.